Her hands are in the airborne, soaring in front line of her vivid red labia, as if keeping a delightfully dirty maze cover. She tilts her chief aside and pretends to sting. Thou dong ti give the taco to thou, you encounter he, she says, echoing the movement a few times for nice action. Or you rotate to he. Not all will note the part, Sarachos says, yet thou'll note. I did. But Sarachos was not manufacturing and supposition since my recent behalf ends in az. She knows I aware the order way to eat a taco since we both of grew up in a location wherever taquerias are just surpassed by human beings mentioned one. Sarachos and her household excited to the Rio Grande Vale of Mexico while she was on to begin medium high school. If the whole southern boundary of the country was the form yours leg makes while it's in a top on heel shoes, the Vale, as he's named in brief, would be the dribble of the leg. While Sarachos was upcoming of age in the boundary area, it was various rather than it is currently. Lot more than poor, she says. These days, the relation among the countries whose cultures encounter in the forever hot slip of Texas wherever we one day named household is complex to say the low. But which remnant real on the area, Sarachos says, is how it breeds a specific trust of civilization, thing how serviced her later and surely serving her currently. While the region you increase up in is mainly Latin American, more than rather than 85%, on to enumeration information, down there is an lack of the otherism how can show so toxicity to a youthful man, says Sarachos. It produced me in so lot ways for the hybridity, but I didn't aware it was preparation me, she says. How's not to say her transfer to an US high school was ever lightweight. Down there were vogue missteps, I was dressed love a supernatural lot of dark blue jean, and tongue training curves how would do read loud in grade and class in the brutal quirks of the British tongue, reason is Plymouth not declared run mouth. The emphasis how leftward her confused and led household in burst into tears several days, yet, as well led her to competitive in speaking and discussion in high school, pavement the way for a pass in top high school AMD. The speaking and discussion portion of the equalization had in fact been an crash. She signed up thought she'd be reception speaking treatment, to assist her barn her emphasis, but proven to surpass since she had a nature ability for sounding and nature tilt for animation supply. Year after, she'd pay the billing time growing the ranks as a Chicago dramatist by proper the Spanish-speaking vote of specific K-grass for 10 year. It wasn't before destiny and several obstinate definition landing her in at Boston College and after Chicago, wherever she'd set a theater business, how she carried out the otherwise of the nation doesn't rather work love the Vale. One history stands out in special. The overnight she excited in her Roscoe countryside couple flat in Chicago, 2 whites, woman neighbors gave Sarachos and her neighbor several soda and start up in an explain on the neighborhood time meeting on the slouch of their new house. Look out for the schematic areas, they told. Above down there you include several. Sarachos lowers her vote to a whispering recall their color. Real to her speaking contest cradle, she tells all her stories love she's operating out a act and making each portion. Dark human beings. They did it once again while proverb the speech Mexicans. She'd never heard nobody do how up, say Mexico and dark love they were bad speech. She benevolently aware them how she, in reality, was Mexico. The lady thick felt the requirement to explain and told she was speaking on this some type of Mexico. Or so I believe I consumable the otherwise of my period in Chicago, such 15-year, decompression which she intended, Sarachos says. Not throw off her shooting Vida, that premieres Saturday, centers on 2 sisters, Melissa Barrera and Michelle Prada, who on back household to the East Los Angeles neighborhood wherever they grew up following the die of their mom find they include rather a bit of decompression to do themselves, as daughters who find their corpse mom was covertly marital to a female and as human beings who include a complex relation in their civilization and neighborhood. He's not an autobiographic shot but Sarachos and her all Latinx, a sort neutral period for human beings of Roman reduction. Writers infused it in vocabulary, images, and subjects seldom seen on TV. One period was the speech pacha, a humiliating done-up speech how in nature refers to a man captured among Mexico and us cultures, as if to say you can't do each order. Sarachos says it is creature recovered by a new general as a favorable. Down there is no order, way to be whatever. This major letter are not the family of migrant, she told. They are the grandchildren of migrant, and how's essential too much, since how's us. How's creature us? At Stars, Sarachos, someone's treated on shows Love, How to Get Off in Assassination, and Roundabout Maids, newly inked a 3-year common transactions, that tool she'll evolve new projects for the web. Or, as Sarachos explains it to her mom, a fond and belief-driven female who has never been Los Angeles and doesn't rather know which her child does for a residing, they gave me a job for 3 more than year. In Vida, her at first Shaw for Stars, she became the at first Latina showrunner in the prize cord area, onto the web's elder defect CEO of Unique Coding, Martha Fernandez. While the web put out a urge for job of and meetings in Latinx creatives in Hollywood in deceased 2015, Sarachos' act, Mala Hierba, trapped the web's focus. By previous 2016, Sarachos was in Fernandez's office space, departure in part on how her loving for the web's Shaw stranger shipped her to Scotland or, by opportunity, in the way of a beautiful Scots she sees whenever one of them can do the length travel. I was imaginary to remain 2 weeks and I remaining 6. Real history. Though the way she was expressive me the history was unbelievable, all the slight flourishes, all the fun moments, all the unknown she put in down there, Fernandez remembers. I was love, well, I include to job in the dame. It helping, too much, after on, how Sarachos brought a bang-out tilt for a Shaw the web had been looking for who to evolve, a Latin-centric history on ennoblement and sort sameness, in a LA background. How tilt became Vida. It was actual, it was authoritative. You can speak the wasn't someone on the external looking in and manufacturing assumptions on which it tool to be Latina, which it tool to be odd, which it tool to be the sum, Fernandez told. The is someone who in a lot of cardiac and humor very had an insides prospect. How's not precisely how the human beings of Boyle Heights thick felt on Sarachos while Vida was announced. To them, she was no various rather than the gentrifying bad guy her Shaw features, a vendida, sail out, a gente fear, a white's Tina. Sarachos had never heard the period up, but following possessing it yelled at her time shooting, she treated it in the scenario. The didn't sit so in Sarachos. So, she heard. Following receive a 6-episode procedure of Stars relying on their airman representation, the 15 minutes puzzle for Stars management team utilized to haul for a green light, she vowed to violate the Boyle Heights ecological system as slight as probable. They found some components of East LA to stay in for corners they'd be survey infrequently. On the uncommon day they had to movie in Boyle Heights, they done certainly their big trucks and basis camping were out of the path, frequently at a big graveyard or box building how was not in utilize. I was auditory to them, to honor and to be down there the low somehow we could, she says. Since their order. While you type of gentrify the neighborhood a slight beat. And if thou re in manufacture 3 months, thou re a gentrifying strength. I get he. She admits, I don't he aware if a non-Mexican Shaw begun would include mind on how definitely. The is a instance, I tell, for the reason how networks should be employing human beings of color to speak their own stories. She nods. Since later thou re cautious in the society whose history you are expressive. Vida is mature in communities how TV has historic neglected, especially the odd Latinx people. If translucent and orange is the new dark noted essential moments for appearance, Vida is the following head of how advance. He's love choose up basketball game but he's art and he's feminism art and he's woman stare creating, translucent maker Jill Soloway, a boyfriend of Sarachos who treated in her on HBO's Looking, tells me after. So while I look Vida, he's love, the is a talk among all of us. She adds, I sense love we're all creation the heritage along. Ultimately they will listen thou. He's the overnight of the Vida opening in center Los Angeles while I see Sarachos following. She's excited since she said stars they should include a rose rug instead of a red rug at their opening, and they brought. She knows he's a little part, but he's enormous, she says, since it proves she has a vote in the madness. If just the human beings at the statute character on a mound who wouldn't garden her weight attention year ago could see her currently. Perhaps she'd though be sitting out of creature troubled at first. She's hard to get it all in, since she knows down there are so lot human beings love her who merit to include a time love the, but dong ti and win ti. My expect is the says we're prepared for these kinds of stories and these kinds of narratives, she says. I expect he's not fair a tendency. She hopes to see this Dominican Vida one day or this Puerto Rican Vida. She hopes Vida makes chamber for more than complex narratives on which it tool to be us. She hopes Hollywood conducted chances on Latinx showrunners how dong ti include a lot of expertise, since before you get the shooting, you dong ti aware if you can do he. She hopes more than of the mute get heard. To how slight kid who was 13 and hard to drawing out her emphasis, I'd tell, hold talk out since ultimately they will listen thou. And how struggle to be heard is fair portion of Vida.